My name is Ryan. I'm 45. I live just outside Seattle and work as an engineer. I never thought a single sentence over Christmas dinner would destroy everything I'd spent nearly a decade building. 9 years ago, I met Jenna. Sharp, confident. She wore control like a tailored suit. Said what she meant and meant what she said. At least, that's how it looked back then. She had 2 kids from her first marriage. Trevor was 13, all elbows and attitude, and Haley was 11, quiet but already learning to weaponize silence. Their father, Scott, was still in the picture, in the way a shadow is in the picture. He showed up when there were photos to be taken or presents to hand out. Christmas, birthdays, a soccer game once, I think, where he arrived late and left before halftime. But somehow, even in his absence, he wore the golden dad crown like it had been custom-made for him. They clung to his name like it had weight. Maybe because he never stuck around long enough to disappoint them. That was my job, apparently. I was the one who stayed. When I moved in, I made a decision, unspoken but absolute. I would be the man who showed up. The man who filled the gap Scott left behind. I told myself, blood doesn't make you a father, effort does. So I made the effort. Every single day. I paid for private school. For both of them. That wasn't Jenna's idea. She said public school was fine. But I wanted them to have more. Better teachers, safer hallways, chances Scott's paycheck would never reach for. I paid for tutoring when Trevor started slipping in math, and when Haley wanted violin lessons, I didn't blink. I drove them to rehearsals, games, recitals, birthday parties, orthodontist appointments. I paid for braces. I paid for phones. I paid for Haley's dance team trip to Montreal, and when Trevor turned 16, I bought him a used Honda Civic. Not a clunker either. Reliable, clean, paid in full. I didn't keep score, not at first. I thought that was what love looked like. You just gave, without counting. But even if I wasn't keeping track, they were. Early on, they at least pretended. Trevor would mumble thanks when I handed over spending money. Haley drew me a Father's Day card once. A picture of us on a roller coaster at Disneyland. She even wrote Ryan in bubble letters, colored it pink. I kept it in my nightstand for years. But over time, even those small gestures disappeared. The thank yous dried up. Eye contact vanished. Conversations got shorter. They learned not to see me. At some point, the name Scott started surfacing more often. Dad said I should try lacrosse. Dad said he might get me tickets to the game. Dad said we'll probably go to the beach house this summer. It didn't matter that Dad never followed through. The possibility of Scott was always more valuable than the reality of me. Scott promised. I delivered. Guess which one they admired more. I remember once, Haley had broken her phone. Dropped it in the sink trying to film something for Instagram. I replaced it the same day. She barely looked up when I handed it to her. Thanks, she muttered, without meeting my eyes. Later that night, I heard her on the phone with Scott. Dad, guess what? Mom got me a new phone. Mom, not Ryan. Not even Mom's husband. Just Mom. That night, I stood in the hallway for 10 minutes, staring at the closed door to her room. I could hear her laugh. I could hear Scott's voice. Distant, fuzzy, distorted through the speaker, but still somehow louder than mine had ever been. Jenna brushed it off. She's a teenage girl, she said, folding laundry like it was holy work. She doesn't mean anything by it, but it meant something to me. It all did. Every little dismissal, every glance past me at the dinner table, every request that bypassed me and went straight to Jenna. Every time I paid for something and became invisible the moment the receipt hit the trash. And still I stayed. I thought time would fix it, that if I just kept showing up, if I kept investing, the return would eventually come. I told myself that loyalty grows slowly, that someday they'd look back and realize who held the structure together. But time wasn't curing the illness. It was feeding it. By year 5, Trevor had stopped using my name. Not even Ryan. Just nothing. He'd walk into a room and start talking to Jenna like I wasn't there. Can you ask him to pass the salt? He once said, when I was sitting right next to him, like I was a hotel staff member he didn't have to acknowledge. Jenna laughed nervously and passed it on. That's when I first started grinding my teeth in my sleep. Haley was more subtle. She just shut me out. Flat eyes. One-word answers. A closed bedroom door. Her affection toward Scott, however, never seemed to waver. She'd post Instagram stories with old pictures of him. Grainy, sun-bleached photos from a beach trip he barely showed up for. She'd caption it, "My real one blue heart." And always Jenna kept the peace. Or tried. "They're kids," she'd say. "They don't know how to handle all this." But they weren't just kids. They were kids being taught. Passively, maybe, but taught all the same that I didn't matter. Jenna never demanded they treat me with respect. Never said, "Hey, Ryan paid for that. Not your father." Never corrected them when they credited Scott for the gifts I bought or the trips I planned. Her silence became permission. I kept giving. I told myself maybe 18 was the magic age. Or 21. Or when college started and they saw what real life looked like, what bills and debt and sacrifice really meant. But the older they got, the colder it got. Trevor graduated and didn't invite me to his ceremony. Said it was too complicated with Scott there. I watched the live stream from my office. Saw Jenna in the stands, saw Scott next to her, hand on her shoulder. I sat alone, in the dark, watching the boy I helped raise cross the stage without a word to me. Haley turned 17 and asked if Scott could take her to get her first tattoo. Not me. Not Jenna. Scott. He didn't even show. Guess who she called next? Not me. She Ubered home and cried on Jenna's shoulder while I sat in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for a dinner no one wanted to eat. No one thanked me for the food. No one asked how my day was. No one mentioned the fact that I just transferred $3,200 for her SAT prep classes the day before. By the 8th year, I'd stopped asking for gratitude. Stopped hoping. I became the infrastructure. Reliable. Invisible. Essential. Ignored. A few months before everything broke, we were all sitting at dinner. Jenna had made roast chicken. Haley was scrolling on her phone. Trevor was talking about some game night Scott promised to take him to. I don't even remember what I said. Probably something about helping him get a reservation or offering to pitch in for parking. Trevor didn't even look at me. Just said, loud enough to echo, "Scott's our real dad. You're just mom's husband. Just mom's husband. Not the man who paid for your private school. Not the man who covered your insurance, your car, your trips, your braces. Not the man who stayed." Jenna didn't blink. Haley didn't flinch. The words landed and no one corrected them. That night, I sat in the garage with the engine off, the lights out, and just breathed. Not cried. Not screamed. Just breathed like a man trying to remember what oxygen feels like. Like someone who'd finally accepted he was drowning, and not a single soul in the house had noticed. But I still didn't leave. Not yet. Because some part of me still thought this was just the price of patience. That all this hurt was the interest I had to pay before the investment finally matured. That if I just gave a little more, a little longer, they'd wake up and see the man who stood in the gap. I was wrong. Everything fell apart last Christmas. We were having dinner at Jenna's place. Our place, though by then the walls already felt like they belonged more to the echo of Scott's name than to anything I'd built. I cooked the turkey. I'd brined it overnight, basted it every 30 minutes. Jenna picked the wine, but I set the table, arranged the napkins, even added the little place cards Haley used to enjoy making when she was younger. She didn't help this time. She didn't even glance at the cards. When I asked what time the kids would be coming over, Jenna, still sipping her wine, said it like she was reading a weather report. "They're spending the holiday with their real dad. If you don't like it, leave." The words didn't register at first. Not fully. They just sat there, suspended in the air like frost waiting to settle. I stared at her. Jenna didn't look up from her glass. Haley was at the other end of the table, scrolling on her phone, smirking slightly. Not to be cruel, worse. It was the kind of smirk you give when someone's reaction bores you. "They're what?" I asked softly. She shrugged. "They wanted to be with Scott this year. No apology. No discussion. No warning. I wasn't just excluded, I was erased. And I think what gutted me most wasn't that they were with Scott. It was that Jenna said it like I shouldn't care. Like I hadn't cooked their Christmas dinner every year for nearly a decade. Like I hadn't woken early to assemble their gifts, coordinate their stocking stuffers, and make sure they had a holiday worth remembering. Even when money was tight, even when I was the only one who cared enough to make it happen. No one looked at me. That's when I felt it. A snap, quiet, internal. Not a scream, not a breakdown. Just the final, irrevocable break of something that had been cracking for years. I didn't argue, didn't raise my voice, didn't ask why she hadn't told me sooner. I just stood up, walked to the office, closed the door, and I acted. First, the Aspen trip. That had been my idea, the mountain getaway, the ski passes, the lodge with heated floors and panoramic views. I had made all the bookings myself, added Scott's kids to the guest list when Jenna insisted they might want to come, despite the fact that Scott had no intention of contributing a single dollar. I opened the airline portal, removed my name from the reservation, then the hotel, canceled my card as the payment method, the travel insurance revoked, the ski passes deactivated. 48 hours later, there were no boarding passes, no coverage, no hotel, no holiday, and just like that, the fantasy collapsed. Jenna knocked on the office door later that night, but I didn't answer. I heard her on the phone, calling the kids, texting someone, probably Scott, asking if he could cover things. I knew the answer before she did. The next morning, Jenna looked at me like I had shot the dog. You ruined everything. I didn't respond. That afternoon, Trevor showed up, furious. You canceled the trip? Are you serious? We were supposed to leave tomorrow. Haley followed, tears on her cheeks, mascara already smudging. Why would you do that? She whispered. You knew how much this meant to us. I stood in the hallway while they demanded answers. But they weren't asking questions. They were accusing. And in their eyes, I wasn't a man who had given. I was the man who had taken something away. But what none of them seemed to understand, not Jenna, not the kids, not even Scott, wherever he was that I hadn't taken anything. I had simply stopped giving. That's not the same thing. Later that evening, while the house was still thick with slammed doors and muttered curses, I gathered the binder. The one I kept hidden in the filing cabinet under boring labels. Statements, warranties, miscellaneous. Inside was the real history of this family. Receipts. All of them. Every payment, every bill, every line item tied to a sacrifice. Trevor's orthodontist? $6,400. Haley's ballet tuition for 4 years? $18,720. The Honda Civic? $9,100. Flights, hotels, iPads, medical expenses, insurance, therapy, camps. I had it all. The total? $384,722. I didn't inflate it. I didn't round up. I just recorded it. Every dollar I'd spent over 9 years to keep this machine running. I placed the binder on the kitchen table. Jenna saw it when she came in from the garage, keys in her hand, still muttering to herself about rearranging flights. She didn't open it right away, just stared at it like it was ticking. I didn't say a word. I walked out. I drove to the apartment I'd been renting for months. A secret, yes, but not a betrayal. I'd been preparing. Not because I planned to leave, but because I had begun to suspect that one day, I'd need somewhere to land. Somewhere I could sleep without hearing the silent language of contempt every time I entered a room. I arrived, turned the key, sat on the bed, and for the first time in years I slept. Really slept. No clenched jaw. No dreams of arguments that never happened. Just silence. And that silence, that stillness, told me the truth I had ignored for far too long. I didn't belong in that house. Not because I wasn't blood. Not because I hadn't tried hard enough. But because I had allowed myself to believe that sacrifice alone would eventually earn me a seat at a table I had already built with my bare hands. But they never gave me a chair. They just ate. The days after, Jenna called constantly. First with questions, then with anger, then with tears. Why are you doing this? She kept asking. You can't just walk away. I didn't answer. Trevor left a voicemail. You're acting insane. You just destroyed 9 years for what, some tantrum? Haley sent me a single text. This isn't you. But it was. It was the version of me I had buried beneath invoices and casseroles and ski passes. And now that he was awake, there was no stuffing him back into silence. I began to unwind everything. The tuition plans I'd set up. The credit cards they used. The joint accounts Jenna had access to. I started transferring things into a trust with my name only. It wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. They had made it clear that I wasn't family. So now they got to live with what that actually meant. And me? I watched the whole structure bend under its own weight. Watched the panic set in. Watched Jenna realize that when Scott refused to step in, as he always did, she wasn't just losing money. She was losing the scaffolding. The man who had kept the lights on while she gave her children every reason to ignore him. I never sent threats. I never raised my voice. I just stopped filling the fridge. And the silence after that was louder than anything else. A week after I left, the house began to buckle. Not physically, the walls were still standing. But something essential had gone missing, and the structure knew it. Jenna stopped calling. The messages slowed, then stopped entirely. I didn't respond to her voicemails. Not because I hated her. I just didn't owe her anything anymore. Not time, not patience, not answers. Then the letters started. Trevor sent the first one. Not an email, not a text, but a physical envelope. I sat on the edge of the bed in my new apartment, holding it like it was radioactive. I don't know why I opened it. Maybe because part of me still remembered the boy I used to drive to football practice. The one who once fell asleep in the passenger seat with his mouth open, trusting me completely. Inside was one page. Lined notebook paper. Rushed handwriting. Ryan, it started. Not Dad. Not even Mr. Just Ryan. I didn't realize how much you did. I get it now. I'm working part-time and can't even keep gas in my tank. I know I messed up. I don't expect anything. Just wanted to say I'm sorry. No return address. No phone number. Just that. The next day, Haley sent a photo, a Polaroid from 4 summers ago. We were in Monterey, the 3 of us, sitting on a bench, the ocean behind us. I had my arm around her shoulders. She was wearing my sunglasses, pretending to be annoyed. On the back, she'd written, "Wish we appreciated you when we had you." No punctuation. No apology. Just longing. And maybe that was real. Maybe they meant it. Maybe the absence had finally exposed what my presence had always hidden. That I wasn't just footing the bill. I was holding the roof up. But it didn't matter anymore. Because regret that only arrives after you've lost the hand that fed you isn't respect. It's fear. And I wasn't about to confuse the two again. Jenna reached out next. Her message was longer. Measured. Carefully worded. We all made mistakes. I should have stepped in more. I know that now. Maybe we can talk. Start fresh. I miss you. I read it 3 times. Then closed the screen. You don't start fresh on a foundation that was never solid. By spring, the house was up for sale. I checked the listing out of habit, half expecting Jenna to remove my name from the deed in some petty act of erasure. But it was still there. My name. The man who paid the down payment. The man who chose a school district he couldn't afford just to give 2 kids a better shot. She couldn't afford the mortgage alone. I didn't gloat. I didn't even feel vindicated. It was just arithmetic. Subtract the one person carrying the load, and the structure collapses. She moved in with her mother. Trevor's college fund dried up. He started working at an auto shop, detailing cars for minimum wage, trying to piece together a tuition payment before his enrollment lapsed. Haley deferred her university offer. Said she wanted to take a gap year. But I knew what that meant. It meant Jenna couldn't pay the first semester. It meant the braces were off early. It meant the summer trip she'd been planning with her friends, the one she'd posted about for months, vanished into smoke. I stayed out of it, not because I didn't care, but because caring was what they'd used against me. They had mistaken love for obligation, and now they were learning the difference. A few mutual friends reached out. Polite messages, casual phrasing. Hey, just checking in. Heard things were rough. The kids miss you. I didn't respond. Because I didn't miss them. Not the versions they gave me. Not the hollow interactions. Not the carefully constructed hierarchy where Scott could show up twice a year and still win Best Supporting Father while I was treated like the house manager. I don't blame Scott, in a way. He never pretended to be anything more than what he was. A man with a spare bedroom and a gift card. He showed up for the snapshots, the Instagram moments, the easy applause, and the kids rewarded him for it. He made no sacrifices. He suffered no rejection. But he wore their love like a robe. Meanwhile, I was in the trenches, scheduling dentist appointments, filling prescriptions, sitting through school plays where Haley didn't even acknowledge me in the audience. And somehow, when the house crumbled, he walked away clean. That's when it hit me. The last realization. You can't build loyalty on sacrifice. It doesn't work. People either love you for who you are or they tolerate you for what you provide. And if they only love the provision, then the moment you stop providing, you're out. That's what I had been. A utility. A resource. Not a man. Not a father. Jenna's final message came just after the house sold. She didn't ask me to come back. She didn't beg. Just wrote, "I hope you find what you're looking for. I know I lost something good." I didn't reply, because by then I had found it. Not something grand. Not some sweeping redemption. Just space. Freedom. A version of myself that didn't wake up measuring his worth by someone else's silence. I still get updates. Social media makes sure of that. Trevor posts now and then. Still has that arrogant tilt in his photos, but it looks different now. More forced. His captions are short. Grind time. No handouts. The irony never lands. Haley works at a coffee shop, poses with latte art and writes long captions about personal growth. Her followers love her. They don't know she once told me to mind my business when I asked if she'd done her college applications. And Jenna, she posts less. Mostly pictures of her mother's backyard. Flower beds. Family dinners with no men in the frame. Scott's gone again. Surprise. The fantasies worn thin. No more borrowed time. No more borrowed wallets. Just the cost. And that cost was always coming. They just never thought they'd be the ones paying it. And me? I live in Bend now, Oregon. Small town. Clean air. I rent a quiet little house near the edge of a trail system. It's not fancy, but it's mine. I'm engaged. Her name is Hannah. No kids. No echoes of someone else's legacy in her living room. She doesn't compare me to anyone. Doesn't weigh me against a ghost. Doesn't treat presents like it's owed. Christmas, we put up a real tree. We cook too much food. We laugh. Not the brittle, careful laughter of families pretending to be whole, but something lighter, something clean. Sometimes I catch myself waiting for the tension, the jab, the unspoken insult, the correction. He's not our real dad, but it doesn't come. Just her hand in mine, her voice, a house that knows peace. And no, I don't feel smug. I don't scroll their lives with a smirk. I just feel relief. Relieved that I finally stood up and walked away from a table where I was no longer respected. Because that's the thing about knowing your place. It isn't about being put there. It's about choosing it. And I chose to stop begging to be seen. I chose myself. There's a kind of quiet that feels like forgiveness. Not the kind that comes from others, no, that never arrived. Not from Jenna. Not from Trevor. Not from Haley. Not even once. But there's a silence that grows inside you when you finally stop bleeding for people who never learned how to bandage. That's the silence I carry now. That's the forgiveness I gave myself. Took a long time to stop flinching. Months, maybe longer. I'd be washing dishes and hear a name in my head. Haley asking for another $40 to grab food after practice. Trevor needing gas money. Just this once. Jenna suggesting I handle the school trip deposit since Scott was running late again. The words weren't memories. They were instincts. Muscle reflexes. Echoes of a life I trained myself to serve without thinking. Now I think. Now I choose. The first time I passed a kid in the grocery store who looked like Trevor, I froze. Something in me wanted to rush over to check if he needed something, if he had enough, if he was okay. It was instinct. care without pause, love without armor. The same reflex that made me reach for the bill even when I wasn't asked. But that part of me is gone now, or at least no longer free. Because here's the truth no one tells you when you sign up to raise someone else's children. You can give them everything: time, money, love, structure, and they can still decide you're nothing. And when they do, you're expected to understand, to stay, to pay, to apologize for making them uncomfortable with your presence. There is no job more thankless than stepfather. That's not bitterness. That's math. And now that I've left the house, the payments, the just this once calls, now that I've stopped letting my name be used like a utility bill, I see how deep the disrespect ran. Jenna never once told them to apologize. Not even after everything. Not after the trip collapsed, not after the money stopped, not after they watched the roof cave in and realized Scott wasn't coming to patch it. She let them sit in the silence. Maybe she hoped I'd return. Maybe she thought absence would soften me. But absence only makes room for truth. And the truth is this: I wasn't part of that family. I was part of the finances. It wasn't about love. It was about logistics. I was a spreadsheet with a pulse. But now I'm something else. I'm a line they can't cross anymore. Sometimes people ask if I'd do it again. If I'd step into that house again. See those children again. Love Jenna again. If I'd pour that money down the same drain for another chance to be the father I wanted to be. I used to hesitate. I don't anymore. No, not because I hated them. I didn't. I loved them so much it broke me. But love without boundaries is not devotion, it's self-erasure. And I'm done erasing myself. I gave them more than Scott ever did. I gave them more than I gave my own future. I put braces on their teeth and thoughts in their heads and gas in their cars. And what I got in return was contempt served cold and quiet. Jenna used to tell me, it's just a phase. But I see now the phase wasn't theirs. It was mine. The phase of believing I could buy my way into a family. The phase of confusing responsibility with belonging. I remember the day I left for good. Really left. I stood in the hallway of the house I used to own. Looked at the framed photos on the wall. Pictures I paid to print and frame, and realized my face was never in any of them. Jenna said it was to keep the peace. You know how Scott gets. I wasn't even allowed to exist in their memories. So I made a new one for myself. A new life, quiet and small, but mine. My days are different now. I wake up when I want to. I eat breakfast slowly. I drink my coffee hot. No more cold toast and carpool lines. No more arguing over screen time. No more bills that aren't mine. I live like a man who got his life back from the fire. Hannah helps. She's calm, present. Doesn't carry anyone else's ghosts into our home. Doesn't ask me to explain my past. Just listens when it leaks out. She's never once compared me to another man. Never said, well, when my ex used to. Never asked me to be a father to someone who doesn't want one. She asks me to be here. Just here. That's all. Sometimes we sit by the window in silence. She reads. I listen to the wind. And I think this is what peace feels like. Not happiness necessarily, but rest. Honest rest. No eggshells. No hidden ledgers. No tension thick enough to chew through. Just rest. And still, every now and then, I check. I check their pages. Jenna's, Trevor's, Haley's. Not because I want back in. I don't. I check the way you press on a scar, to see if it still hurts. Trevor looks tired. Works a lot. Posts less. No ski trips. No tech upgrades. No thanks, mom posts. Just gym photos and tired captions. Grinding. Leveling up. That kind of hollow optimism people post when everything's sinking. Haley started community college. No dorms. No out-of-state dreams. Her photos used to be manicured, filtered. Now they're just fine. She's learning something I already learned the hard way. Life without a safety net changes your posture. You don't stand as tall when the ground beneath you shifts every month. Jenna rarely posts now. She used to tag me. Used to caption pictures blessed or our tribe or my people. Now it's flower gardens and half glasses of wine. Her smile doesn't reach her eyes. I don't feel smug. I don't feel anything. I already gave them my feelings. All of them. What's left is just clarity. Clarity that love without respect is just dependency. Clarity that the person paying the bills deserves a seat at the table. Clarity that silence in the face of contempt is complicity. Jenna let the kids disrespect me for years. They didn't invent the disregard. They were trained. But I let it happen too. I thought that if I stayed quiet, if I worked harder, they'd see. They'd feel. They'd understand. I thought love was cumulative, that if you did enough, gave enough, stayed long enough, the reward would come. Didn't. All I earned was exhaustion. And so now I ask the question I should have asked back then, not just of them, but of myself. What do you do when the people you love refuse to see you? Do you scream? Do you beg? Do you keep giving until you collapse? Or do you walk? Do you let the silence be the answer? Do you reclaim your place not as a martyr, but as a man? I made my choice. I walked. And in walking, I found a new truth. Being needed is not the same as being valued. I was needed when the bills were due. I was needed when the car broke down. I was needed when Aspen needed booking and braces needed adjusting. But I was never valued. And need without value is just extraction. So now I live a life without extraction. No one here drains me. No one here forgets what I bring. No one here erases me and then asks me to carry the cost. And still I wonder, was I wrong? Was I wrong to leave that house, to let them stumble, to let the roof fall without trying to hold it up one last time? Was I wrong to ignore Trevor's letter? To leave Haley's message unanswered? To let Jenna learn the hard way what silence really costs? Was I cruel? Or was I finally honest? So I ask you now, whoever you are, wherever you're reading this, not for validation, not for pity, but for reckoning. What would you have done? If your name was never spoken unless money was missing? If your face was never in the photos? If your love was never enough? Would you have stayed? Would you have kept paying? Would you have accepted the title of just mom's husband after 9 years of sacrifice? Or would you have stood up, pushed in your chair, and walked away? Tell me honestly, was I wrong?